No. Can we have your attention, please? I don't think yeah, that's better.
Too much music.
Too much music? I don't have too much volume. The handouts that are up front here, one of these would be sufficient for everyone. It's just an example that we'll get into a little later. They're just one for each. Just one for each person. 1 page for each person is plenty. Just one for each person. I have 4. No, there are just one. One checklist. Get one of his. You take 1 page. You just take 1 page. This is an example is all. It's just an example. Are they all gone? We have more people than we expected. I'll explain it to you later. I will read this statement to you. This group, the objective of this group is to define ways to teach square dancing successfully. A caller's objective is to teach dancers to properly execute the movements of square dancing while maintaining an atmosphere of fun. Learners should begin having fun the first night of class. It should be evident to them that the caller is having fun also. Callers should give praise for things well done, as good listening, successful execution of commands. I usually say, you folks are doing great. I can see right now we're going to have a good time during this class. When the group is having difficulty, a caller should let them know that others have had this happen to them too. Dancers must dance moves many, many, many times before they become automatic. I tell them that the average dancer has to go through a call 100 times before he can do it automatically or do it without thinking. That may not be true, but it's a good number. And then I am very careful to point out that if it takes more than 100 times for a dancer to dance a call and become automatic with it, that there's possibilities that he or she might become a caller. Very often, a crowd of dancers are nervous and excited over something new. They tend to become a little noisy. You know that. They get talkative. And I have found the best way to quiet them is not by getting loud with them or turning your volume up. I turn mine down. And I continue talking. Now the next time we're going to do this move, we're going to do it. And soon they look around to see what's going on, and not only that, the people who are around them will police the area for you. They'll say, hey, He's trying to say something. And this gets their attention. When I teach my classes, I plan my program very carefully, and I realize that some of you do not have this time, do not have the time that maybe I have to plan a program of teaching. But I plan it very carefully. I'm willing to deviate from that plan, if necessary. I add to it. If I have a very, very receptive group on a particular evening, I may teach one more thing than I'd planned to teach, or I may give them something extra that is not on the list. For example, in my classes, excuse me, I teach teacup chain in my learner's class, never later than the 10th week. Be this good or be it bad, it's worked for me. I think teacup chain is one of the best teachers of direction that we have in square dancing. We teach the girls to go to the right. We teach them to go to the middle. And you'd be surprised just how happy the dancers are when they get through teacup chain. They love it. They just, the roof comes off. I still teach daisy chain, which they learn to count. Forward 2 and turn back 1. Forward 2 and turn back 1. And something quite new, not quite new, but a couple of years old, when I get into stars, I teach them to do star the route. I don't tell the people they're doing star the route right away. I don't tell them that they're doing a daisy chain. But I do tell them they're doing a teacup chain, and they learn this. Remember, some nights we teach a lot, some nights we review. If your group is not receptive, review. If your group is receptive, teach. We've got to teach all the people that we have. We have a program whereby we must tell some people that we feel like it's in the best interest of square dancing maybe if you become a caller, because I can't teach you to dance. No, you realize I'm kidding. Callers are the best dancers they are. We got to be the best dancers. If we're not, we're in trouble. But this is the way I tell my classes. If you're having trouble, you have a chance of becoming a caller. And I'm quick to point out to them that I had to go through 3 classes and then to finally decide to become a caller. But people learn naturally at different rates of speed. So we must gear our classes to this. I'm not one who teaches to the slowest person out there. I try to hit a happy medium somewhere down the line. I'm not the one that teaches to the fastest person out there, and we have those. And they will soon learn to get in the groove. I use a numbering system. How many of you use numbering system in teaching classes? It's very new. I use the Ballard numbering system, which they have down in the Yak Stack area, and it's a computerized numbering system that mixes your groups. I do not allow my club members to dance with class. I use a demonstration square. If we happen to be 2 or 3 couples short in a square, then we let the people fill in. But I use a demonstration square for teaching, and I use that demonstration square once during the evening to dance a tip, just to give the caller and give the class an idea of what a tip in square dancing is at first night, second night, or third night. And your numbering system cuts down on your clicks right away, and they dance with different people all the time. Of course, we have slow dancers, we have fast dancers, and here we use the talents of those people who learn faster to help those who learn slower. And it's a very good system. It's worked for me, and I'm sure it would work for most of you. I have these little sheets that you picked up, page 1, I give to the dancers. First night. This is a check-off list for them. I don't know if I had any page 1s or not here, but the first block to the right of the listed basic is for teach. Tonight I teach 1, 2, 3 things, whatever I feel like. And we'll say we're on the 10th night of class. So I'm teaching 2 things. Then my dancers have a chart that they look at up here, and I keep this chart, and it coincides with the list they have, and they check off that they have been taught these 2 moves. 1 week from tonight, I reteach the same moves. And a reteach is just as thorough as the teach, because you had people who were absent, in all probability. So you reteach the same move. The third block is for 2 weeks hence, and the third night on those same 2 basics, I call them directionally. No teach, directionally call them, if it's possible. The fourth night, the fourth week, those same 2 moves are called without directions. I say right and left through. I do not say turn the girl. I don't say right pull by and courtesy turn. I say right and left through. So, with my dancers or with my class, and you can do things with classes because they don't know any better, you know. They have got to listen because this is all they know. And what you tell them is gospel. Now look, if you're having a problem, let me know, and we'll help you. We'll find help for you. So they check off with me on the list. And I also say, if you cannot do this move without directions, come and tell me. So they keep a checklist with me. And my chart goes up, and I say, I've checked off that all of these dancers, all of these learners, as we call them, can do a right and left through without directions. And I have had people, and we have worked on this, really, they come up and say, hey, Ernie, I can't do right and left through yet without directions, and you've got it checked off. And I can't check it off my list. Okay, then we will go back and work on it more. So, this helps all the dancers, and we all need review. I encourage the learners to tape my classes. Take them home, take the tapes home and practice. If you can find some way to practice, practice. We do a lot of practice sessions in 2 couples that we can do with 2 couples. Then they can take their tape home and they can practice with 2 couples. I also suggest that my class members visit other classes when possible, or even go to another class if possible. If they want to go to 2 classes, that's fine. If they can go to 3 classes, that's fine. The quicker we can teach them to dance, the better. We want to teach, as you were. Not the quicker the better, but as quickly as they can learn to dance well, it's better for square dancing. So if they're going to 2 or 3 classes, they get practice. And you know, and I know that we have children in school that have the same class every day. These people have a class once a week, and they have plenty of time to forget what was taught. So, if they can go to 2 or 3 classes a week, very well. We have in our area a cooperation with other callers, and we have the last 2 years started a class in January, which they told us could not be done, said you can't start a class in January and run it through the summer. It's too hot in Fresno, California. Well, we dance all summer, so why can't we run a class through the summer? So I have a caller now that starts a class in the middle of February behind me. And when I get to the end of the basic program, I will tell these 5 couples that I have right now, and we're just finishing the basic program while I'm gone. I have 5 couples that I feel like cannot go on into extended and do well. So I will call these 5 couples aside and talk to them individually and tell them in as positive a manner as I can that I feel like you will be better if you will practice a little more at the basic level. Practice your basic program a little more, and then you will be a little more ready to go into the extended program. And they know what basic, and they know what extended, they know what mainstream is. I've taught them that. So then caller behind me picks them up, and they get more practice. They're about 6 weeks behind. So they get more practice at this level. And what would be ideal if we had another caller coming along 6 weeks later, that we could eventually drop these people back. Our program also is to pick up additional dancers. We start with 8 squares. Last year we started with 8 squares, and we finished in December a year later with 14. So we pick up dancers who have dropped out. We feel like the extended level is the place for them to come back. They come back and learn to listen all over again, and they're doing things that they have known to do in the past. So we bring them back in at the extended level, and we pick up 3 or 4 squares this way of people who have dropped out of square dancing 2 or 3 years prior to this. And also, we open the class up for class members from other clubs or other groups who would like to come in and join our class and review. Maybe they're ahead of us. They start in September, so they come back and play with us. We do the same thing again at the end of the extended program. We open our class up for 3 weeks. We tell these people that cannot go on into the mainstream, you should drop back and practice here. It's working for us, and it may not work in another area. And I think anytime we're teaching, we must teach thoroughly. We use demonstration squares, and we tell each couple, each person, watch the person that's on your spot. So, some things that we do are controversial and would not work in your area. But this is a determination that each caller or each teacher must decide what is good for my area and pursue it. You're going to make mistakes. I did. I made mistakes. But I have now found a program that's working in our area. And we would like, I'm going to ask Colin to make some statements, and Johnny, but I use all of the teaching aids I can. I've had callers tell me, you shouldn't use a chalkboard, that'd be cheating. If I can get a point across to somebody by getting down on my knees and crawling across the floor, I will do it. But we must use everything available to us to teach. We're doing it in classrooms and schools, so let's do it in square dancing. One of my pet peeves is when we become callers. It happened to me. Now, the way you learn to call square dancing is get you a class and teach that class. Those people I taught have long since quit. And that's what happens. Maybe we're lucky and we get 5 or 6 squares of nice people in square dancing, and here I am learning with them. And I don't teach them. So they drop out. I think that our teachers, and I think CALLERLAB should pursue this too, our teachers should be the best. Teachers, the people teaching people to square dance should be the best we've got. And we should be trained to teach. Teaching is my life. I've taught school all my life. And Many of you have too. And do you know what qualifies a person to become a square dancing teacher? Enough guts to pick up a microphone and say, I are a teacher. Colin?
I am standing. I hope last night we were all listening very closely to our Danish friend and noticed that his accent disappeared after a little while, because mine will too. I want to pick up on a couple of points. One is, instead of talking for a moment about teaching, let's talk about the making of the teacher. When I would venture to say that I'll get no argument from this hall when I say, you came into this business to call and then became a teacher by accident, or because you had to become a teacher. And we don't prepare ourselves to become teachers. Some are fortunate to come from the teaching profession, so as Jack did, and other good teachers like Lazary, for instance. So they have behind them years of experience in teaching, and they know what that's all about. But we come as callers to a profession that we know nothing about, and how do you prepare to become a teacher? And last night, one of the significant things that our speaker talked about was preparation. That's part of your attitude. If you're prepared properly to teach, you'll be a better teacher. You cannot teach movements that you don't understand. You can try to. So into the preparation of becoming a good teacher, there goes a tremendous amount of work. Now, I know that's a four-letter word, but in order to become a good teacher, you've got to be properly prepared. You've got to know exactly what you're doing. And one note I put on here, and you can quote me on this, it may go into a book sometime. You cannot control the floor if you cannot control yourself. We have seen a tremendous amount of dancers driven out of square dancing, or would-be dancers, because some would-be teacher was screaming at them in his loss of control. Now, he lost control because he just wasn't prepared to teach. So one of the things you have to look at is, how do you teach? It's not the same as walking through a disciplined floor of square dancers. It's not the same thing at all. For instance, if you have a basic that you wish to teach and it has the term three-quarter in it, you have to remember that three-quarter means something to you, but be prepared to look into somebody's mind out there and say, how long was that person out of school, and did they ever really have to grasp the concept of what three-quarters means? Let's find another description, if you have to, for that person out there, and that applies to every basic. Find at least 3 verbal descriptions, as well as the operation of any assistance that you can get from such things as the hardware around the hall, the chairs and tables, your help in the way of your wife and yourself, especially when you come to the niceties of square dancing, the twirls, the frills, the flourishes, and the hand-touch movements. The dancers, I think it was Confucius who said, one picture worth 10,000 words. And I don't mind stealing from a Chinese anytime. We get out there, we do touch a quarter or whatever basic we're doing. The dancers can see how we do it. Remove phrases from your vocabulary like, you grab this girl. Don't laugh, you've all heard it. With that word goes the suggestion that that's what you're doing. You grab that girl. You take that lady's hand gently and walk by. There's no harm. And all the way through the class, don't forget the first 3 or 4 nights, they're nervous, and they will be tight, and they will hold each other tight. But gradually stress in your class that they don't have to hold tight. They have to touch and remain in close proximity. Work towards providing good dancers, not hurry up. I'm going to disagree with my friend here in a moment, too. Don't hurry up to get them out so that you can provide some income for some club or for a necessity to run a large dance. The object of teaching is to provide a thoroughly taught beginner. And in doing so, I think the caller must also look at his own discipline. I come to this meeting once a year and other meetings, and I'm prepared to fight and argue for the order or the listing of the square dance basics. Having adopted that order, I feel that if the majority of callers think that order of teaching is satisfactory to them, then I am a good enough teacher to be able to work with that order. And the reason I do that is that when I go to call somebody else's beginner dance and I get up there, I don't want to slip into a basic that he hasn't taught, and I don't want him up on the stage there calling basics that I haven't taught. For one thing, the dancers are going to either think I cheated them or he cheated them, and I don't want to be in that sort of adversary position. Ernie talked about using a teacup chain as a tool. It's a great tool, but Ernie may have misled some of you to thinking that if it was good for the 10th night, my God, that must be good for first night. And don't think it hasn't been done. Things like that have happened. Now, the teacup chain is a very, very fine movement, and I think it has a place in square dancing, but I don't necessarily put it that early in the order. In fact, I don't. I use it in the plus area where it is. I do, however, make some basic judgments from the list, and I don't say I don't deviate. Let me tell you that I do have at least 2 deviations from the list, and I'll give you my reason. It has to be a good reason, and then I'll give you a bad reason. Let me give you a bad reason to deviate from the list first of all. Quote, I teach square through first before a right and left through to stop people doing a courtesy turn. That is a bad reason for doing that. That shows that you do not have the discipline to teach your dancers 2 moves that end differently. Now let me give you my reasoning for changing touch a quarter and curlicue in their position on the listing. The ladies are getting an awful lot of twirling and misorientation, and touch a quarter, which achieves the same as curlicue, can be achieved with less disorientation of the ladies. Now, I would fight for that here at CALLERLAB. It's a little early to start fighting for it, but I think that's a good thing. I have one other movement that I've moved up, and this is a strange one. But the ladies in the men's sachet is a very, very simple, almost a one-night stand movement. And I need, in my first night, because I teach with the drill of a singing call, I need a little spice in the beginning, middle, and end. And it happens to be a very nice one to be able to use with beginners. I use the singing call, which I write myself, incidentally, from whatever music is available of the day. I write them all right from day one, right from lesson 1, and use it as a drill. I very quickly get them into my form of mixing is to let them dance with their corner in progression rather than mixing them as a group in the hall, although I do this, but I do that without a numbering system. I use mixers. I use some line dances. However, they do get a mix if you can move them around with a corner progression. And that's going to be the way they're going to dance. So they better learn to do the corner progression very early. So the singing call, and if you can't write a singing call with the first 5 basics on the list, come and see me, and I'll help. I know that's a problem with a lot of callers. They're not written in any books. You've got to do your own work. So preparation. Go out there, do the best job you can, and remember you're out there to teach dancers, not to provide dancers. Thank you.
First of all, let me say that it's certainly a pleasure having the opportunity to work with these 2 gentlemen. I think they do a fine job. First of all, let me say that in staying with the theme of our convention of attitude and judgment, I think that as far as my report is concerned, I'm staying pretty much with the physical or the psychological and mental aspect of teaching instead of too much on the physical side. I think the one thing that I think about when we think about a caller teacher is confidence in yourself. The thing, as I look at it, I may look at it differently than perhaps most of you. I look at it in the light that we have a product that we have to sell. And I am confident that I can sell this product. The only thing that I need is to get the people there. I feel that once I get the people there, I am confident in myself that I can sell the product. And I think this is what we have to have. I've written down a number of things, and actually we could probably spend the entire session on practically any of these, but I have a list of things that I have had for a good many years, most of them. These ideas are not all mine. I've requisitioned them from different callers.
Another word for
research. Would you believe steel? I have to remind myself of these things. We just can't automatically pick them out of the air. I have to go back. And let me say before we start that my wife is the best evaluator that I know, along with her suggestions. And then I check back on the list, and I think this is what we all should do. We never look at ourselves. We never go back and look. Say, oh, I think we're doing a great job. I think I'm doing this correctly. Or you never get the feeling, can I do it better? So I think we should, at all times, evaluate ourselves. And as I say, I've had this list for a good many years, and I just like to sort of share it with you. And these are also my thoughts. The teaching of new dancers is probably the most important aspect of our entire square dance movement. If it were not for the new dancers into the movement, after a period of time, the activity would cease to exist. The more time you spend in calling teaching, the more you realize that the first few weeks of a new dancer is the most vital period to their entire dancing experience. There are numerous qualities, and I'm sure that you would probably have a lot more than I have written down here, that constitute a good caller teacher. Some of the things that come to my mind are, and as I say, we could take any one of these and probably spend the entire session on it. But I would like to name these for you. Now, I'm not sure that John will want any of these, or you might not want them, but I think I have an extra copy, and I'll probably give this to John K., and he may put it in the direction. I don't know. Number 1 is leadership. Number 2, now these are not in any particular order. Natural ability. 3, judgment. 4, attitude. 5, commitment. 6, patience. And I would have to underline that one. Patience. 7, friendliness. 8, confidence. 9, courtesy. I'd like to underline this next one. Dependability. 11, cooperation. As I say, there could be many, many more. There are just a few. All of the above and perhaps more contribute to being a better caller teacher. There are 2 of the above that I believe to be very, very important. They are judgment and attitude. I would like to quickly define them for you. Judgment. What or how we do at a particular time things that have a bearing on the results of your endeavor. If I were to select one quality that is essential in the calling profession, I would have to choose judgment, because practically everything you do as a caller teacher, judgment is involved in certain degrees. There are a number of things that one must think about or establish in order to set up good, strong guidelines in a caller teacher program where judgment plays an important role. I have a list of examples here. 1, evaluate your class. 2, evaluate and know your material. How long am I going to make the tips? The length of the dance session that particular night. What to use as teaching aids. How much to review. To include mixing. When to start using singing calls. Adjusting material to the dancer's ability in singing calls, which Colin just mentioned. These are a few. Let's check attitude. Definition of attitude. A manner showing one's disposition or opinion. Number 1, you must like people. 2, you must be willing to take criticism and smile. Show enthusiasm. Show confidence. Give encouragement. Have a positive approach. Sincerity of purpose. Practically everything we do as a caller teacher in reality is actually teaching, and I was very unfortunate, I guess. A good many of the caller teachers, particularly in the early field of square dancing, were teachers. I am not a teacher. so I had to work extra hard. So let's define the word teaching. Teaching is imparting knowledge to someone who does not know how to do a certain thing. In other words, to show how. I have written down a number of examples that I think are some general principles for an effective teaching program. And that's really what we're interested in. Number one, learning takes place best when motivation to learn is strong. Praise and encouragement are stronger motivators than criticism. Learning requires complete attention of the learner. Learning takes place best when explanations are clear, direct, and simple. Fatigue hampers learning. Never overdo relative short practice sessions. Movements learned in one setting are not automatically recognized when encountered in a different situation. Individuals learn at widely different rates. I think this has been proven. I'm not sure where I got this, but I'm sure that it's a proven fact that one can absorb approximately 10% of what one hears and 80% of what one does. So give a good, complete walkthrough. Repetition. This is the only method that we learn by. Repetition. Not only do the dancers become more familiar with the movement, but it also gives them, as well as building up their confidence in what they're doing. The use of key words. And also the use of teaching aids. And I try to find as many of these as I possibly can. I'm not going to take too much more of your time. There is one thing that I do that has proven, at least I think, beneficial to me, because we could cover any one of these, but this one thing I think has helped me out more in the last 4 or 5 years than anything that I've done. Early in the teaching period, I teach my dancers with no particular movement involved. This is just a basic teaching situation. I teach my dancers the fraction of the turn so that they will know a full turn, a 3/4 turn, a half turn, and a quarter turn, with nothing in mind but that basic drill. We take time out every session, real early in the teaching period, when we teach them the fraction of the turn. My theory is that once the dancer can master the fraction of the turn, a good many problems involved in teaching is conquered. So when we get to the part where we need the fractions of the turn, there's no problem. They know the fraction of the turn. But I think the greatest thing is being confident in what you're doing, know your product, and sell it. Thank you, Ernie.
Very good, Johnny. Colin. For your information, this session is being taped. So if you'd like the tapes, you know how to, that's been explained to you. We would solicit any questions, whatever. Colin misunderstood me. I run my classes 52 weeks. Hope I can get everything taught that needs to be taught in that length of time. And some of you can't do that. Everything, if you want to, would you come up to the microphone if you'd like to have a question or something? I know Paul would. Yes. Come on, Paul.
Ernie said that he teaches his class for 52 weeks. I happen to be chairman of the committee on the basic program, and we arrived at 41, and I guess I don't know whether I've told you all, but we sent out questionnaires and tried to cover as many people as we possibly could all over the country, even in foreign countries, and so forth. And we have to, when we're a committee chairman, we have to take the reports and the information that we receive and compile that and make recommendations. Well, I am not in accord with 41 weeks being the amount of time to teach the basics of square dancing, the mainstream of square dancing. But As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, according to all the reports that we compiled them, I think we were down to about 38, as I recall. I'd have to go back and check my records. So I cheated and put it up to 41. I wish I'd have cheated and probably put it up to 50 or 60 or 70, wherever the case may be. So I just wanted to say that this is one thing that I think that it's very hard to do with the mainstream list, is to get it taught in that length of time.
Paul?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with everything, just about everything that's been said here. I feel a little bit of everything everybody else does. I had one little thing in a little thing that I think is in an optimistic manner, and something looking ahead here, as the speaker said there last night. First of all, we're in the greatest activities that there is in the world. Right now, square dancing is the greatest thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. It's something that we really want to sell to give to people. I had one little thing that I don't really hear enough that I'd like to hear a lot more. Across the notebook that I use, on every page, I write down, mention tonight, fun, fellowship, friendship. That's why we're here. The semantics of how we do a left out man is secondary. The first thing, we got into this because it is fun, fellowship. Let's drive it every night, every class that we have, whether it be 20 weeks, whether it be 52 weeks, 6 years, or whatever. Fun, fellowship, friendliness, this is the thing that sells it, not the movements, where they are, levels, or anything else. But that old fun, fellowship, friendship, courtesy, and the niceties to the people in it.
Hang on a second. Would you state your name, please? That was Paul Greer who just left. Would you state your name, please, when you come?
I'm Jim Shadler from Toledo, Ohio. And in my everyday business, I deal with people, same as you agree with teaching. And Johnny mentioned selection of words. I've been in many seminars. And there are words that are taken negative. I don't know about most of you, but most of the people I dance are grown-ups. And there are 4 no-nos that I use. This works for me. I happen to be fortunate enough to have the largest class for the past 3 years in the Toledo area. And I'll give you these 4 because we're supposed to pass this stuff on. And whether it's worth anything or not, you may or may not disagree. Number 1, I am not a teacher. I'm an instructor. Number 2, I do not teach beginners. I teach new dancers. Number 3, I do not run a class. I run a group. And number 4, and this is the one that seems to be the key, I don't teach lessons. I have square dance sessions. Older people are not children. They don't need a teacher. They're not beginners. They aren't in class. They're not taking lessons. We're calling square dancing is fun. And the first thing we do when we start using these words, and they say, I'm not going back to school again. We're trying to give them an activity, guys. And I use the 4 words. So what words? I hope it helps you. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Milda Dixon from Reading, Mass. I'd like to re-emphasize the first point that was made by the first gentleman here. I think that we consciously should be teaching fun. And one of the ways of doing this is to have the caller, when he gets through with this particular tip or teaching session, is to be down talking with the dancers constantly, because that relationship to me is very, very important. You can also check as far as the level of the sound and things. We've all heard some of these things before. But by checking to find out how far that coffee cup is down, when the cigarette is near the end, and then get back up. And let everybody know that it is fun.
Very good.
I think we have to all remember that the people who are square dancing is discretionary. It's not mandated. And many of our things that we take from teaching, how we have teachers telling stuff like college associations and how they teach. And we forget that those kids in there are there because they have to be there. not because they want to. Every one of our nights we must leave them wanting to come back, not having to come back.
True. We have, with callers, square dancing is a hobby. It's a profession. With dancers, it's a recreation. And we must remember this. They do not have to be there. They're there because because they got conned into it. You know, the guy.
We got in England, we found ourselves doing an awful lot of one-night stands. Gradually, these one-night stands, for all everybody was enjoying them, these things that keep it simple and silly, the callers, or a couple of callers in particular, started to go mad because, there was just nothing in it for the callers. So we started to think, well, can we push these one-night stands a lot higher as far as where our movements are concerned? And the minute we started thinking that way, we started to think, well, we've got to find a way of teaching them and start to break all these movements down into little pieces to teach them to these one-night stand people. For instance, we started to say, let's think of the do-to-do. We split the do-to-do down into pieces and say, let's do half a do-to-do, which we call a pass-through. We taught a courtesy turn as a courtesy turn. Then we taught a half a do-to-do as a pass-through. So we then did half a do-to-do and a courtesy turn. And then we said, shake hands with your partner as you go through. You've done a right and left through. This type of thing. I know it's not new. And then gradually, this, with an awful lot of joke-type remarks that we use at one-night stands, we started to find that we were pushing a one-night stand crowd in 3 hours possibly, an awful lot further than we were pushing a beginner's class in 5 weeks. Because we were using these methods and also making the whole thing fun, as everybody said, because we were then teaching the one-night stand stand and making it fun, but we were then going back to our classes and putting the straight face on, saying, right, we're now teachers, you're going to do it properly. And we just weren't getting anywhere. This might be of some help to people to break these movements down into pieces and make the whole thing fun.
Very good.
I would like to add a point to that, and I agree with Len. There is one difficulty here, though, and I find myself doing it. At a one-night stand, and I do a few, not regularly like Len does, I tend to ignore, because I don't feel that it's the time to do it, any possible styling points that I would make much emphasis on a class. So much of the class time is taught in such things as shuffling and the niceties, which I don't really bother with at a one-night stand. I've got ladies in high heels. There's not much point in trying to teach them how to do a shuffle. So that is where my excess time gets used up. While my beginner class would not be as far on the first couple of nights as a one-night stand, because I've gone back to teaching such things as where you put your hands when you circle left and how you step. And if I'm doing a one-night stand at the local officers' club or wherever, I don't really care where they put their hands and and how they step. Within reason. Take my wife, please.
Hi, Kenny Ferris from Maryland. There's one thing that I think leads to greater dancer satisfaction, and a very simple thing, and that is learning their names. I think the people in your class really get a kick out of you learning their names for those things, and when you can point them out, say, here you got your red shirt, turn around. Now, if you say his name, he's not offended as much if you use his name. And this is a problem. I have a hard time remembering names. If anybody here can make some suggestions, I'm good at giving some, I'd like to be happy to hear them.
Sometimes it's best not to mention names. It's good to know them, but sometimes it's good to say, I noticed that we're having a little trouble in this area. Let's see if we can correct it and go through it without pointing someone out. We have that person who just can't stand it, and it might be Joe. But I agree that you should learn their names first night if possible, which I can't. Go ahead.
Kurt Johnson from Wisconsin. You got me thinking a little bit, Ed, when you went over your...
No, Ernie.
Or Ernie, rather. On your class. You left them
Say it on the end.
52 weeks in your section. Now, is this at the end of the mainstream, or do you include the quarterlies in there also?
No, the quarterlies, yes.
Now, earlier you said that you have this backup session that's starting 6 or 8 weeks after you start. Of course, there aren't very many of us in our area anyway that can afford that luxury.
Right.
So we have to retain those slow learners in our group. How long would it take you to reach the same goal with those people who stayed in your original group? You're sort of slipping the roof of the staff here, taking the cream of the crop and giving them 52 weeks, which is another luxury that many of us cannot afford.
True.
I'd like to hear from all three of you fellas I know what Johnny used to do when he was in Riverton, but now with an established list of CALLERLAB, how long does it take you to get there?
I would say that every area is unique. Some areas and some of us are controlled by clubs. Fortunately, I'm not. I determine how long the class will run for my club, and I will determine if they're ready to graduate. And they will not go into the club until they've graduated, and really we don't graduate. About 4 years ago, I graduated 4 couples, and this is a reflection on me, on my teaching. 4 couples came to me after we'd presented them with their diplomas, and they said, "We made this, we're going to bowl next year." Haven't seen them since. They haven't been back since, so I didn't hook them in a hole. And at that time we were running about 45 weeks. Now that I failed. Don?
I'd like to throw in and endorse something Ernie said earlier there. I have found it too to be very helpful in teaching stars. If anyone hasn't tried, star the route. Whether you call it by that term is incidental, but it's a very effective tool. And if you're ever having difficulty in teaching stars, give it a try. Star the route.
Very good. Colin?
The speaker before last did say, how long do you teach beginner dancers for? Well, I'll tell you how I cheat my way through this. You've almost got to play a confidence trick on people today, because if you approach them and told them how long the learning process was to dance at the club level in the area, you're going to have a little difficulty. So I start out by teaching the class. My class and my clubs are all in the same hall on a Tuesday night. And when they reach the start of the mainstream list, that is when they finished extended, my, quote, mainstream club on Thursday goes into a mainstream workshop consideration. And now both the Tuesday and the Thursday are running side by side with practically the same material. I am excluding from the Thursday night all of the things that those people really know, while I bring the beginners, the learners, whatever you want to call them, on both nights, so that now instead of getting 1 night a week, they're getting 2 nights a week. So within the framework of 9 months of the year, I can actually exceed the 52 weeks we're talking about. And that's one way of doing it. And you have to do this if you're going to provide +2 dancers in the area. As far as that last question about teaching people to star, There's an excellent book that was put out in Southern California with contras in there. Go through those contras and find the section on mescalanzas, and you'll find a considerable number of star figures that you can do in circles around the hall. You can teach people to star going around the hall with the right and the left-hand star. And after that, you can get them in the squares. I don't believe it's necessary. I keep hearing people say, well, I have to use this and I have to use that. I think we make excuses to ourselves. There are plenty of things on the list that with a little evaluation and a little creative choreography, you can teach all the way through that list. Oh, so I deviated twice from the list, and maybe I'll better go back and look at what I'm doing. Maybe I don't need to. Maybe I shouldn't. We are teachers, and one thing we don't have, of course, is self-discipline, and I will join you all on that. And I think if we're going to teach, we need that. If we want to teach something, we don't have to grab over from the A1 or the challenge list and put something in there. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you want to teach stars, just set your mind up and clean up your own mind and say, how do I teach this? There are lots of ways of doing them. One of the things you can do when you're teaching stars is don't forget to remind people where they're standing before they leave home. Take a look at your spot. Make an imaginary mark on the floor. Now all four of you go into the middle and put a bunch of right hands there, and we'll sort them out when you've got all of them in there. And then let them star and say, now change hands to the middle and go back to that spot that we had on the floor before we started. Just little descriptive things every day. Don't think because you know a term very well that it means anything to the dancers. Don't forget the square dance language is a non-language. It is not English. That's why the Japanese can square dance. And I'm serious. It's a non-language. So don't talk about descriptive square dancing. Once you leave the first 2 or 3 things on the list, like circle left, circle right, and go forward and back, we get away from street terms, from English terms, and delve into our own terms. So don't talk about descriptive dancing. It is not descriptive to a non-square dancer.
Thank you, Colin.
I'm Dorothy Burton from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I have a question. Do very many of you maintain a sub-mainstream club, per se, so that those who don't care get so involved and stay in that group, and those who do then can move on into the mainstream? It depends kind of on whether you're in a heavily populated area, I suppose. You just can't answer if you're not. In Fort Wayne, we're medium populated, and we don't make a whole lot of money on the lower group, but it is effective in keeping it.
Did you say sub-mainstream, like basic or extended? Johnny, you want to reply to that?
We have one in our area that we can send to.
Did you say sub-mainstream? Yeah, well, I have a built-in key where I am located to that remedies that particular type of thing. Because being in a retirement area, we have all of those levels. They're available. If they only want to dance up to that particular level, then that is available in the area that we are in. Now, you talked about coming from a small populated area. Is it Fort Wayne? And what's the population? I mean, just roughly. Okay, it's immaterial. Anyhow, the fact that I called for over 20 years in a town less than 5,000. And I think what you have to do is be a good salesman at that particular point and sell the only product you have in that particular area, because there's no towns nearby. So that you have to put them all in one pot and be a good enough salesman to sell that product at whatever level you are. And most of the time it was probably at that particular level. But I say right now we have a built-in situation where we don't have to worry about it. But I can see that you have a problem there. Ernie, while I'm here, let me answer Herb's question too about the people who are having problems keeping up at a particular level. Again, we have a situation where we have classes starting at different times. So right now we have a place where we can take these people. But I think you have to go in through the back door. You know as a caller when you're standing up there, you know the people who are having problems. You know. Because they stand out like a sore thumb, really. everything is working right, and here's this little mess over here in the corner. And it doesn't take long till you see those people, and invariably they'll be the same people that may be over here on this side of the hall next time or down the middle. But it doesn't take long for you to pick out those people who are having problems. I like to handle it this way. I like to say, listen, I've got another class on Tuesday night, and some of the people, I want some extra practice, and I want you to come and help me with these people. If you got extra time, come on over. So in other words, I'm going through the back door, and the people think that they're doing me a favor when they're really doing themselves a favor by going over. So this is what you got to do. You can't say, hey, George, you need a hell of a lot more practice. Why don't you come over Saturday night? He's gone. See what I mean? So you've got to go through the back door.
I'm Harry Cullenhaver from Columbus, Ohio. I maintain 2 clubs up there, one in Columbus and one at about 30 miles away. Now, what we practice in ours is we have a 69 basic club runs all year, plus a workshop. In other words, we graduate our class at 69 in about 40 weeks. And then we're going into a type workshop type thing to advance to plus 1 and 2. Now, when a person has, or a couple has reached the plus 1 and 2, what we feel is 1 and 2, they are invited to join the regular club, which is held on a different night, like a Sunday night. Our classes are held on Thursday. Now, this is done not by me. This is done by 8 people on the board. 8 people who are 5-year dancers, or approximately more. Some of them are 10-year dancers, but most of them have been 5-year dancers. President, vice president, online. They're the ones that decide when these class people move to the, or are invited up to the regular club that we want to do. And we find it very successful. We have a good 69 club, and usually 8 or 9 squares. And as you see couples that are fit to move up, this is a real example. Some of them make it a little quicker. In approximately 10 weeks after their 69 graduation, they've been introduced to most of the moves in the plus 1 and 2.
Thank you.
They've been introduced.
Very good.
Steve Kearney from Fayetteville, North Carolina. I know that students like to break away from learning the square dance and including break, learning things like line dance, like Cotton Eye Children, Moses, and have stuff like this. And all of this takes up time. I can tell by the reaction whenever I do introduce things that they like it. But like I said, it does come into the time. And I like to get a feel as to how others, like y'all, do. Do you introduce this kind of thing as a break for your own enjoyment and some of the consequences of the time it takes up, or do you just not introduce this kind of thing at all?
I don't know what you guys do.
What'd you say, Ernie?
Mixers, Cotton Eye Joe, and things like that. I don't use them.
This is an advantage to timing.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting those people in the timing, which is
True.
a lot of the things.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's really California. Certainly, in the light of your professional background teaching, would you take it to the steps you do personally in planning your teaching of the simple course, what techniques you use for your own training, and what materials you might use?
Okay.
To get the message across.
I start teaching a square through. We'll take square through for example. When I teach my dancers to do a pass through, I start immediately teaching them to do a square through. I've never mentioned the word square through. And we'll do a pass through and face your partner, pass through, face your partner, pass through, face your partner, and pass through for 4-5 weeks. They dance these. And when I get ready to teach the square through, I say, hey, gang, we've been doing a pass through and face your partner. Let's do it with hands now. Let's do it with alternating hands. Let's give a right to your opposite pull by, face your partner. Give a left pull by, face your partner. Give a right pull by, face your partner. Give a left pull by. And we will call this a square through. From here on, this will be known as a square through, and we use 4 pull by, 4 hands. 4 hands. Once again, not yank by or not jerk by, but pull by. And we start teaching styling from night one. And smooth, comfortable dancing. So, and sometimes I would use a little piece of tile and say, this is a square. If you do a square through, you're going to turn on each corner of this, but the last time you do not turn. Also, if we're doing a square through, as Colin mentioned, we may have trouble with the courtesy turn. So you will find that you will have very little trouble with the courtesy turn if you have 4 boys square through. I say this a lot, it isn't true, but it's a good statement to make. I have not lost a dancer in class for the last 3 classes I've taught. Because I've taught them to do a courtesy turn with their hand down here. That's not true.
Kenny Fair from Maryland. One of the things that I hope that there would be more discussion of at CALLERLAB this year was the problem of the push towards the fluff level. Now, the gentleman that was just up here a moment ago got right to the heart of it. You really have a problem in this area as far as I'm concerned. As soon as the people are finished mainstream, you put them in a +1, +2 workshop. I think this, more than anything else, is what's going to be the demise, if we ever have a demise, and things aren't looking too good in terms of class size, I understand, for square dancing today. There's too much emphasis on people going up to +1 and +2. I talked to a woman at the Whiteman Festival. She was talking to me about doing a 6-word festival. And we got to talking about the dance program in their area. She goes, oh, you really have on the left, you know. Oh, there's really high-level dancers up in this area, she was telling me. And she said, well, we have, only 1 or 2 mainstream clubs in the area. Wow, what do you do with your beginners when they finish class? Oh, well, we put them right into the +1, +2 workshop during the summer. And I was just appalled. And I'm curious, how many people do this kind of thing? Just push right on through the +2.
All right, okay. We're going to have to cut our discussion. This is not pertinent to our group, really.
But for teaching it is.
Well,
in my area, I raise my hand and I do teach and put my beginners instantly into the +1. I have 27 callers in our association. 2 of them belong and subscribe to CALLERLAB. 25 care less. I have about 40 people. These guys are going to do it. I can't. I'm losing.
I think the reason why I was tying it into the teaching was that a lot of times, how many of you have your beginners come up to you and say, well, what do we have to, we're going to have to learn +1 and 2 after this before we can get into the club? And they're really concerned about that. Okay, because all their friends are doing +1 and +2. And it's something we have to consider. That's why I brought it up. And it comes into play in your classes because your beginner's going to ask the questions.
Go ahead.
My name is Long Carolina, Senator for California. Getting back to the basic concept of teaching, we all have the problem with the slow learner. Well, I've learned the technique, but if you can just teach people somehow or other to accept extra help without making them think, as Ernie did, like taking them to a study, having them act as helping him. Then even if you get a club dancer and say, look, we've found our caller and to have a special dance on Sunday afternoon, we'd like you guys to come. So what you do when you get them there, at least what I do when I get them there, is in addition to work the problems that I know they're having trouble with, you can go a little farther than that and perhaps teach them something that you have not yet taught in the class, or maybe even an APD, and you teach it from an APD standpoint. Psychologically, you give these people a great big lift, and they go back to class and say, holy smoke, we got something for all the rest of these guys. Surprised how well it works in my class.
Thank you. Good. Very good.
Bob Lang from Florida. couple of things that Colin mentioned a few minutes ago, I was going to listen to this together, and several other things that have been said here. Brings to mind what a lot of us do not do, and that's homework. Homework meaning that if you will go to the basics while you're teaching those classes and break those little basic figures down into segments that a person can understand, then you've got it made with no problem.
Very good. We're going to have to close our discussion down. We'll take yours and then we'll.
There's one thing that I have tried with a slow runner that works real well. We have what we call garage days. And when the slow runner is told that he can get 3 of the couples out of the class and clean up his garage, I'll bring my equipment over and I'll work with him for a couple hours. And providing these brings the beer and what have you for the week. And you'd be surprised how much friendship is developed with them as compared to the other members of the class in this one.
One of the things I put on my notes and forgot to mention was the sense of achievement. And this is very big in any class. As you get towards the evening, and I think you should all bear this in mind, make sure that you back off enough and then really let them have a good time. And adding to this, we have now added a regular once-a-month Sunday dance at the level being that we have achieved in the area. And I mean a dance, not an instruction period. Go out there and give them a good time. Now, when I started square dancing, we were the maximum level we ever attained at that point. The high-level dancers did an alamandar. So don't tell me we can't have a good time down at that end of the spectrum. We can, and give them a good time. Let them see that they have achieved. Don't say you're going to be a learner forever. Let them achieve right from the start, and I think that way we'll answer the last gentleman's problem of having to get them to +2 before they go out. Thank you.
Very good, Colin. One other thing. We must remember this, I think, gang. They've got to win. If we're to win, the dancers must win. I call them learners. I don't call them beginners. I call them learners. They're learning to square dance. And I make notes on my lesson plans before the evening's over. I make notes as I go. When I get home, I write my lesson plan for the following week based on the notes I have on the present plan. The following morning, for every class member that was absent, I write a postcard to them, telling them we missed them, hope they were not ill, look forward to them being back next week. And this is your first absence in this session. Remember, you're allowed 5, 3 in succession or 5, and you're out of the class. And I remind them where they are and let them know that we're concerned that they were absent. And so we must be a part of the group, and we must not put ourselves aside from the class, and let them learn and teach them. And I would like to thank all of you for coming to this session. I would like to see this session, and I'd like maybe your opinion. I would like to see this session. We're not a committee. We're not a standing committee. Colin has proposed that we be, but I would like to see this session a series of demonstrations by professional people on how I teach square dancing, or how I teach a right and left through, how I teach a square through, and use a square and demonstrate. And I think that you can get more from it than just listening to me rattle on as to how I do it.